because between Stockton and Keene, they're not the same company. These are different companies, but they kind of work in concert with this to help with it.
Well, thanks, Mark. As Mark alluded to, my name is Kip Brennan. I represent Keene Building Products. And if you do not know what rain screens are, well, guess what? You're going to be hearing about them more. So, perfect illustration is this. This is our O2O-1 product. It's a 6mm product. So what that basically means, it's about 1/4 inch in thickness. As you can see, it's really easy to apply. The whole purpose of a rain screen is really to bring ventilation back into that exterior wall assembly, right? We have higher energy codes, especially in California, Title 24. So now again, we want to bring back that breathability, not only for drainage, but for drying. So this 1/4 inch material is perfect. It's probably used about maybe 85% in North America. So we make different thicknesses depending on the different types of exterior veneers that you're going to be working with. But this is just a quick illustration. What I love about what we're doing these last 2 or 3 days is we're all promoting better building practices. So when we have manufacturers like Stockton that are actually making the related materials to incorporate rain screens, that's huge. Because again, all we're going to do is promote better drainage and better ventilation. So with that, I'm going to kind of pass this on over to Don, and then he can kind of give you more information in regards to the accessory side of it.
And here you can see the mat, this fibrous mat, and the covering on it. We like this covering because what it does, otherwise if you didn't have this this covering on it, the mud would just fill up and then it got nothing. So maybe with other cladding materials you'd have, but with stucco we really want to see this mat on top. So,
Great point. No, great point. Thanks.
and just so you guys, I'm sorry, this is going over an air weather, actually this is Keene's product that we put over it. So this is actually compliant for all zones across the country. That'd be A, B, or C. This will work in any zone that you got right here.
So we're very compatible with any weather-resistant barrier, whether it's a fluid applied, whether it's grady black paper, whether it's a DuPont Tyvek type product. So again, it doesn't matter. The other thing is too, I want to point out to you, if you're using 2 sheets of black paper, there's a revision to the building code. If you have a created drainage space, now you only need 1 sheet of black paper, and I believe that's an illustration of one of the cutaways that Mark has over here in the corner. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you.
Good point.
Okay, so one of the issues that the industry's facing right now is because it's changed over to a drainage mat. This comes in how many different thicknesses? 4 or 5 different thicknesses? Okay, 4 different thicknesses. So that's going to change the ground thickness of what your stucco is going to be. Typically, the industry roll forms this type of material, so you're getting stucco screens that are going to be 3/4, 7/8, 1/2 inch. Anything outside of that is custom. Typically, the bigger manufacturers don't have that. At Stockton, we can make any different size. So right now we're using your 1/4 inch, right? This 1/4 inch. So we made this ground at 1 1/8 inches, okay? And not only do we have the bottom weep, we have expansion joints, head of wall, over windows, everything else. And what it is, you can see it closer on this. You see those slots? Those are drainage slots. Typically, you're used to seeing a weep hole. These are drainage slots, and if you see where they're located, it's so that the drainage mat will go right into it, right down here, and it'll maximize the efficiency of the drain mat. So that's what this is called, True Weep, these accessories, and that's what it's there for.
And I've noticed, Don, it's got the larger slot holes in it.
Yeah,
normal weeps have little tiny holes.
Exactly.
Big,
Yeah,
nice
big,
slots
nice
and
slots.
ventilation.
So, and yeah, exactly, ventilation too, because you get ventilation up through there as well.
Is there anything they would do for a bug screen? I mean, is that a concern?
He's got the bug screen.
Oh, okay, good.
See that mesh down there is working as a bug screen.
So it's a little longer down there and it folds under?
Yeah, so Mark just brought up a great point. A lot of times we field calls and saying, okay, well listen, do I need to order a bug screen? So if you notice, we have on the Keene rain screen, we have a 2-inch piece of fabric down at the bottom side. So we call that product a salvage edge. And the easiest way to explain it and install it is you take that 2-inch piece of fabric and tuck it on the back side of the drain mat, and now you have a built-in bug screen. So it's not a separate product that you gotta purchase. It's basically all one product, right on the roll size, everything else. And then what you do is, on your next layer of drain mat, you take that 2.5-inch piece of fabric and then overlap it on the existing roll that's been applied. So you have this true layer of monolithic fabric throughout that whole exterior wall assembly. You do not overlap rain screens. you butt joint them tight, okay? Also too, on your horizontal side, if you're starting a new roll, you want to make sure that you use some sort of taping mechanism to tape that seam, especially in a 3-coat stucco application, because you might get a horizontal crack, you know, at a later date. So we promote basically using duct tape, a simple duct tape to kind of tape that seam. If you notice about the Keene rain screen, all our products are black. Why are our products black? Meaning the entangled net. So Keene is, what I'm trying to say, Keene is very environmentally friendly. So what we do is we use up to 40% post-recycled material. So in order to do that, all our rain screens are going to be black in color. So that's kind of a good selling point to a lot of architects, building envelope consultants, because again, we're a very green company.
Can I add something? I've been in the industry a long time, and I want to tell you, and I actually work at the Pacific Northwest, and Canada is kind of, would you say Canada's sort of kind of the father of rain screen, at least in North America, especially Vancouver, Canada, and I was very much involved in Vancouver, Canada. And what they did, and I want to tell you, this is a little history on rain screen and how it did in the mat, is that when they first came out with that, they realized, okay, we need that airspace. We want to do it. So they were putting strapping on the wall, and they put the strapping up, and it worked. It provided ventilation. The problem was we got a lot of cracking. We got really bad stucco cracking. It seemed to be a big problem like that. Then that's when they came out with these mats, and then of course they solved the cracking problem. But then they all of a sudden filled the mats up with cement, and then Keene came along with the idea about putting this covering on top. And guess what? Now we got that mat, we got that airspace, we keep it clear, and here's the main thing for everyone: the cracking has greatly reduced. This is why the SMA, if you're going to do a rain screen, and this is the one that was code compliant for all of it, this is the way to do it. And we typically, and I hope this is okay, did I say, we typically like the thinner mats. Because it's just that we find it's not that the others crack more, just that we think that you give plenty of drainage, you get enough ventilation, and it works really well. And it also keeps your trim sizes a little bit more normal. Don would probably know about that. I don't know, how does Stockton feel about that? Do they like, are they fine with the thinner mat? Doesn't matter? Yeah. I don't think you need to have a bigger mat size like that. But but this is a great product, and we use it. I've seen it all the way from Vancouver, all over. It certainly works around here fine, everything like that. So, it's the other thing. It's simple, and it's just easy to install. I call it the learning curve for training guys to do it isn't that big of a deal. You get to the strap systems that I talked about the early days, and you can still do that, and that's what the code even says. You can have that. Yeah, that's a really tough. That's a lot more parts and pieces that get to be ridiculous. And this is a welded wire product, 17 gauge. You can see it's this one's. If you're wondering. If it didn't have these dimples in here, you see those are the furring dimples that keeps the lath off of that mat and everything like that. And what you want to do what that does is allows the lath to be in the center of the cement. I think the other day I talked about pouring a concrete. If you poured a concrete slab, if you had your mesh in there and just push the mesh down in the sand and then pour the concrete, it wouldn't do you much good. That's why we put them up on blocks, right? When you pour concrete, you put it up on blocks. Well, those are our blocks basically. Look at them, we got them everywhere. And the code requires that you put these fasteners on 6 inches on center, vertically along the stud. You want to do stud attachment. Because this is a demonstration, we're just kind of tightening it down right now, and it's just a little bit different. We're not really doing it. What you would normally do is mark the line out like that where the studs are and make sure you go up along. And this product, it's actually the Stucco wire, is a really nice product because it's got these twin tracks here. Those are actually 6 inches apart. So it's pretty much, and that's one thing the manufacturers are doing a really good job of. In fact, even like I know when the Fortifibers paper here, if you notice across, if you look down here, here's the black paper they use, which you could use underneath there. They put these lines on there. When I grew up in the industry, we didn't have that. Those are 2 inches apart. And the reason for those is that's the minimum spacing you're supposed to have an overlap on that. So they're trying to make this stuff I don't want to use the word idiot-proof because that's not the right word to use, but they're trying to make it as mistake-proof as possible to try to give, and they really try to help the guys out to, but these guys, they don't need that, guys. They could do anything. By the way, thanks to our three guys, Kenny, Jose, and Pablo. They're with the OPCMI. This is the National Plaster. Actually, these guys are out of the Vegas office, so of course, because they're local. But we do have the national guys here for the Plasterers Union. The Plasterers Union, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Todd, the oldest trade union in the United States. So, 1864. So, were you on that board back then in 1864?
I know I look like it.
So they've been training plasterers and cement masons for well over 100 years, 120. Well, I'm not good at math that way, so well over 100 years. So
The other thing I want to point out, is this black fabric that Mark was alluding to. Again, it's our Keene filter fabric. This has a UV stableness of about 45 days. All right. I field calls, our sales team fields calls, it's like, well, wait a second, when should I install this product? I'm like, at the most, you want to leave it up on the wall for maybe 2 days, because it's not so much the fastener, it's your weather elements that you're dealing with, all right? The last thing we want to do is over-penetrate the fastening of the rain screen, because as you can see with these guys right now, your true fastening mechanism is going to be your wire lath, especially in a Stucco application. So we're very conscious about not over-penetrating that weather barrier, whether it's a fluid applied or whether it may be some sort of like sheet membrane. But again, UV stable for about up to 45 days. We definitely don't recommend that. We basically say install your metal lath probably within that same day, if not the following day. So I just wanted to kind of point that out.
I think I have a feeling these guys are getting ready to plaster. Don, did you talk about your trim here on the side yet?
No, we didn't. So
this is a little bit on these trims. These trims are really cool, and Stockton is probably one of the more innovative companies, I think, on new trim. And this is the guy that actually invents a lot of these sort of things. Can I ask a question about? Did you talk about why there's a double thing down here and what purpose it is? Could you tell us a little about why?
So this is.
Notice it's got a double down here.
It's counter flash right down here. So up above you got your drainage slots. That's going to go down, and then it's going to counter flash over this. So it's a piece of flashing. So it's a single trim that works as a flashing and a weep screen. It's customizable, so whatever drainage size you're using, we can adjust with that. This one's something pretty unique.
Can I ask a question? If you had concrete coming up here, could you push this? Could you get this tight to the concrete? Would you have a problem if the concrete was here?
Now code is 2 inches.
I know, but
Yeah,
you
I
could.
would. I'd be fine with it.
I want to let you guys know, because code says 2 inches from here, but and I agree with Don. Don and I tend to think alike, so, but I would be okay if the concrete is there, as long as it's not all crushed and all that.
Exactly.
It's gonna weep. It's gonna
Yeah.
allow, and I will tell you, as the SMA, when we write letters to building departments like that, they generally accept it. Can never guarantee it, but because you might run into a situation where you have no choice, and that's usually what happens. Is they have no option to do it, and we can come up with because the code does allow for alternates to the code, and this definitely drains.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
Yeah.
You can, in fact, we can pour water down there, and you see water just coming right out of it.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. I didn't-
So this is something that's new to the industry here. This is a finish right casing beam. You notice this little step that's in there? You're gonna put the brown coat to this first step, the finish coat to the outside edge. This is gonna prevent that cracking that you see on casing beads all the time. So it gives you a nice finish edge. Stand back and look at it after it's done. It goes right to the edge, so it's nice and clean. You know, I'm from California. Southern California, they'll tape off the mill core. Northern California, they'll finish over the top. They got different ways of doing it. In either case, it cracks. It cracks all the time. The guy who invented this actually does a lot of high-end houses up in Northern California, and he was doing a lot of smooth coat on these huge walls, and they would always crack. So he invented this. He's been doing it for the last 5-6 years on his own business. He came up and shot it over to Stockton, and now Stockton makes that for us. You notice the keyholes in there as well. Okay, so we don't want to get any crack in there at all. So if you want more information, we got it over there, but this is the finish right edge casing beam.
They're going to go put some mud on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, there's, and I was talking to the guy, saying, I hope I don't reiterate or duplicate what you just said, but part of the problem is that with a standard traditional casing bead, which there's nothing wrong with it, you will have that metal edge it shows, and a lot of architects get picked, they don't want to see that metal edge. They want to see the plaster finished right to the edge. And if they do plaster right to the edge of that metal, maybe saying what you said, sometimes it wants to pop off later and all that. It looks and it happens. So really, we see this as being this is a solution. I know at the SMA I deal with a lot of architects, and if it's tract homes or something like that, no, it's not going to happen. But we get a lot of high-end homes, like what Don was saying, and they want perfection. And what it does is, even on some of the commercial work, we're seeing a lot of plasterers now that actually take their trowel and scrape it back to try to make it work. Well, this kind of does it for them. You'll be able to see here. They're going to put their scratch coat on it. They use that as the ground to work to. And it's got to have little holes in there, as Don was saying, because it's got to have something for the plaster to key and bite into, to mechanically attach to. We're putting tape on so that we can show the system. We're only going to put, we're just going to plaster the lower half of it. And I am not going to be surprised if we're not going to just put the scratch coat on this and then do the trim on the other side, because I have a feeling that mud is not going to, it's going to be hard to get that mud to set up to brown in at one shot. So what Kenny right now is using what we call hawk and trowel. I'm sure if you've been here before, we've been talking about that. And right now they're taking the mud out of the bucket. I can tell you out on the job, if you're working at production work, they would use what we call a mud board and stand. And they actually make metal stands just for plasters. I'm sure the masons have them too. I know they do. And then they put a mud board, and you can dump the mud on the mud board. And it makes it a little bit more efficient for the plasters to move. But we're just doing a demo here, so these scoops work fine for that.
We'd probably be pumping it. Out on the job, we'd be pumping it.
Yeah, and Mark is exactly right. On most commercial jobs and bigger jobs, especially down here in the Southwest, we pump a lot of plaster like this, and that really goes fast. It's one of these days we've got to bring one of the big piston pumps in here and run it, wouldn't that? I think that'd wake everybody up if we fired that thing up. And that's while they're doing this, I'll explain that, because people sometimes think that stucco is only suitable for the Southwest or only Spanish-style buildings. That's not true. You can do any style. That's actually why stucco is such a popular material, is that it can be done with modern-style buildings. You can do, there's a lot of German-style stuff. Most of Europe is done with stucco. So it can match any type, and it can handle any climate. The reason it's so popular in the Southwest here is because of that gun we're talking about, the pumping. Because it gets production rates so incredibly higher than what you're doing by hand tool that they can actually, they do a lot of work. And that drops the price down. Just production will drop the price down. The negative thing about that is, first of all, the guns themselves cost a fairly amount of money, although they do have smaller pumps you can use. They cost a lot of money. And you also need the skilled workers to do it, like these guys, and that's actually what they're trained at. I know the union does a really good job of training them how to work on a gun, and you think, well, that's no big deal. You just shoot, that's it. You just shoot, spray, and plaster. Oh, I worked on gun. I actually ran gun crews, so I can tell you that's not how it works. Everybody has a job to do. It's kind of funny. There's actually a job called a hose puller on the gun crew, and you think, okay, well, big deal. It pulls a hose. I got to tell you, go out on a job site and go look at a scaffolding and try to figure out. And by the way, you'll get fired if you keep shutting that nozzle off every time you have to jump levels or whatever. So he has to serpentine that hose all the way around the scaffold so that it keeps running. And that's job one. He's got to make sure the nozzle keeps running. And then the second thing he's got to do, because the nozzle man, the guy who's shooting, he's got to pay attention to the wall. He's got an important job to get the right thickness on. So he can't be watching where he's walking. So he's counting on the hose puller to basically keep him safe, keep everything ahead of him, and actually will be pulling the hose a little bit, kind of tugging on him, letting him know where it's going. And then you got a crew behind. Everybody's doing their job. They've got to stay up. If they fall behind, everything gets messed up. You got scaffold setters. You got scoremen, that's what he did there. He horizontally scored. You got trim guys that actually. I equate it to an NFL offensive line. If you all just going to snap the ball and start running in each direction, how well is that going to work? It doesn't. Everybody's got to know there's a play, a plan. They all know what they're doing, and they all work in that same direction.